Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Campion, and this is the Miracle of Healing on Empower Radio, where conscious people come together to explore the world of healing and heal the planet one person at a time. And today, we're going to be talking about how to live a spiritual life. And how do we really live a spiritual life in the middle of all the chaos that we're going through, or actually any time at all? I have with me today spiritual teacher Bob Lancer, and we're going to talk about some very practical means for aligning your spiritual framework to the framework of the universe so that you can, I don't know, connect to these higher vibrations and we can kind of bring in ourselves. And what's unique about Bob's work, and I know because I work with him a lot myself, in fact, he's my spiritual teacher. So while many of us talk about the spiritual path, few of us understand how to actually do it. And this is, I think, the gift that Bob brings to the work that he's doing. It's super practical. And let me just tell you a little bit about Bob. So Bob has been a full-time spiritual teacher and a healer for over 30 years. And he uses a couple of different techniques. One of them is called the method, and we might get to talking to that. We might be getting to talk about that. He uses the Kabbalah, and the Tarot cards as a way to help us work through our emotional suffering, to kind of clear away our emotional suffering so we can align to these higher vibrations. So happy to have you on the show with me today. Welcome, Bob.
Oh, I'm happy to be had.
So
So,
let's talk about spiritual
the
living. Like,
spiritual
what does it
framework,
mean to live a spiritual life?
what it means to live a spiritual life is I would say the vast majority of people on the planet don't know what that means. They typically think it means to be nice,
Mm.
just to be nice, um, but and to live according to their own personal values, which is the opposite. Not that being nice is the opposite of the spiritual life, but sometimes it is the opposite. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to be firm. The framework that I like to use for, you know, just grabbing an image here. The framework that I like to use the image I like to use for the spiritual framework of the universe is something called the Kabbalah tree of life. And it looks like a nice framework. It's a schematic of the spiritual dimension of life. In order to live a spiritual life, you have to wake up to the spiritual framework within your own self. You've got to be able to be guided internally by something higher than your personal values. And so living the spiritual life has two phases. The first is purification. And the purification process means liberating myself from domination by my ego. And my ego meaning my personal values, my personal likes and dislikes, any limiting beliefs. The mantra, I would say, for living a personal life is simply God is always right.
Hmm.
God is always right. And God is, from the spiritual framework of Kabbalah, God is in control. So what is happening in the present moment is right. This is exactly what needs to happen. Now, my personal values may not be consistent with that. There may be, something going on, stuck at a traffic light when I have to, be on time for an appointment. And, I feel, oh, this is terrible. This is wrong. Or you lose your job during the coronavirus, or you're feeling an intense inner emotional pain. You say, well, this is wrong. This is bad. Well, that's the personal value system. So the first step is releasing ourselves from domination from the ego, meaning my automatic likes and dislikes, my automatic desires, my emotional reaction patterns, my thought patterns, my action patterns, my speech patterns. Those are all habitualized. Those are all run by the subconscious. They're automatic. My beliefs about money, my beliefs about how to make money, my beliefs, feeling lack, all of those things, that's all comes from the ego, right? So we have to create a space between our awareness and our ego and those personal values. And in that space, you're able to tune in to the spiritual framework of the universe.
So this is like a much deeper proposition than maybe I think a lot of people think living a spiritual life means like quitting their corporate job and opening a yoga studio and becoming a vegetarian, or
that could be the
it's
opposite. That could
Mhm.
you could be going the opposite of a spiritual path that way.
Right.
Because that could be based on what you think you're supposed to do, what you believe you're supposed to do, You know, it looks like spiritual people are doing that, but the reality is you might have to drive a truck, you know, and be willing to do that and be in love and in peace and enjoy doing that. One of the things you don't have to worry about regarding the spiritual life, though, is that you're always going to be relying upon your gifts and talents in your life. Your gifts and talents are one of the signposts that God gave you for how to live a spiritual life. So if you're a natural writer, or you're a natural singer, or you're a natural dancer, or you're a natural speaker, or you're naturally good at counseling people, you're a natural photographer, whatever your gifts and talents, or you're naturally good with bookkeeping and accounting and organization and that kind of, whatever your gifts and talents are, that's going to define, you know, a big chunk of your spiritual path. A lot of people, though, they were raised in a home where they were so concerned with how the people around them were going to react to them, they never got a chance to really discover, well, what am I good at? What do I want to do? What's my natural inclination? What brings me joy, right? So the spiritual path is very much where we start out in the work that I do, as you know, Lisa, where we start out is getting in touch with joy. And that's where we use the method, which frees us to experience joy. And then joy becomes your guiding light. Joy is your first connection. Joy, love, inner peace, those feelings, that's your first connection to your spiritual path. Joseph Campbell called it following your bliss, right? Your first connection to your true spiritual path, to living in accordance with the spiritual framework of the universe, is you're following a path of joy. You're able to sense your joy. You surrender to your joy. You don't choose a way of life that sacrifices your joy. You don't try to accomplish things in ways that are joyless. That's your first connection to the spiritual framework of the universe.
And what do you do if you're not able to feel that? If you're so anxious or so depressed or something's going on, like how do we do that? And honestly, Bob, like I'm not sure I ever really felt joy until I started working with you. That was like, especially on a consistent level, like I would get like moments of it,
Yep.
you know, and fleeting moments of it, you know, Christmas morning or whatever, day your baby's born, that kind of thing is where it would come. And the rest of the time, it wasn't something that I could count on feeling.
Yeah, well, I know even in my own life, until I found the method, I never knew happiness. After doing the method is when I realized I had never been happy in my life. From earliest childhood, I had never known happiness. And many of the people I work with say that after doing the method, they discovered happiness. They realized they've never been happy in their lives. And then, so you experience happiness, and that's wonderful. But then the real challenge comes along the spiritual path is, am I willing to trust happiness? Am I willing to use happiness as sort of my parameter for life, right? So how I'm functioning, you know, when we know the mantra we use is, whatever I do has to be simple, easy, and fun. And people say, but I got responsibilities, I've got kids, and I've got mortgages, and I've got a job, or I've lost my job, or I've lost my kids, or I've lost and they're going through the stuff, and they feel like, they're taking away their permission to be happy. Right? Because they don't know that happiness is the spiritual path. So the spiritual framework of the universe is the spiritual dimension of the perfection of the universe, right? The perfection of the universe. So that means that when you're not living a truly spiritual life, there's going to be a correction that comes in. You know, we call it karma, whatever you want to call it. There's going to be a correction that comes in that's basically sort of slapping you down and saying, this is not the way. You've got to correct your pattern. Now, it appears sometimes that people who are living corrupt, dishonest lives, right, are getting away with it and thriving and prospering. But that's only on the appearance level, right? Because part of the spiritual framework is that good always wins. The truth always comes out. The light is always triumphant. If we look at the spiritual framework of the universe from Kabbalah, this sphere over here represents victory, right? Which is the universe. The light, the divine will, is always victorious. What is meant to be, and the center of the spiritual framework of the universe is beauty. So every moment of your life is essentially beautiful. If you're not in touch with the beauty of the moment, you're not in touch with the spiritual framework. Right?
It's hard to feel that if you just feel like pain, and if you're so connected to your pain and suffering all the time that's the only experience you're having.
I agree.
It's hard to trust that that spiritual framework is like for us, you know. And one of the most, I think, powerful things you taught me was it was to switch my view from the universe as an adversary, you know, to the universe as a you
An
know, an
ally,
ally. And that
totally.
was really hard for me because
But it's
you
not
know,
an ally to the ego.
right.
Right? So you'll hear a lot of, sort of New Age teachers saying, the universe is everything that happens for you, not against you. Well, if you identify with the ego, it's happening against you,
Mhm.
because if you're taking pride in something or you're getting emotionally attached to a particular situation, you better live in fear because you're going to lose it.
Right.
The universe is your ally, but it's your ally for your spiritual development, your spiritual unfoldment, your release from attachment to conditions you can't count on. But it always goes back to that question, Lisa. How do I experience that? How do I find my spiritual path? How do I follow the path of joy? How do I experience the beauty of the moment? Until I found the method, there just wasn't any way. I've studied every spiritual teaching I could find over the last 40 years. Like even Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body. So I tried paying attention to my pain, but my pain body didn't go away. Wayne Dyer talks about, no excuses, just focus on the positive. I tried that, but I would still be brought down by fear, right? And so when I found the method, that just released my attachment to my inner pain. And I found that in that release of my attachment, I can open up my heart and I can live in a place of peace and love and joy. And the most important practice, and if you practice these things, you'll start to see things melt away. But ultimately, I think we all have to come to the point where we have to use the method. But if you practice, a simple practice I'd recommend for spiritual living is practice living with zero internal pressure. Release all, yeah, release internal pressure. First step is you got to notice it. And so we do it. The way you get in touch with the spiritual framework is through your feelings, not through your thoughts. You don't try to figure out how life works. You just get in touch with your feelings, and you can feel: am I in fear or am I in faith? Am I in joy? Am I in sorrow? Am I in peace or am I in pressure? And whenever you notice yourself feeling the slightest bit of internal pressure, let it go. Now, some people were so hooked into it, were so glued onto it, that it takes something more to let go of it. That's where the method comes in. Many people believe in living a life of pressure. They want to be in a state of pressure. They live in a pressure cooker. They try to put pressure onto other people. And if you are with someone who believes in pressure and you're letting go of your pressure, you drive them insane. And they will either leave or kick you out
Right.
because they can't stand if you're not taking on the pressure. We're in crisis. We're in a critical situation. You got to move. And if you watch the media, if you watch the news, there's a really dark ray that comes out of those flat screen TVs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, especially right now, you know, like that there's so talk about pressure. Like, you know, there it's constant 24/7, like
Yeah.
and now I'm not saying it's not difficult what's going on right now, or you know, there's people are having challenges for sure, but there is that dark energy now. Like what, like because you keep referring to it, and I think maybe some of our listeners don't know what the method is.
Right.
Like what if in a nutshell, what is the method?
It's a process of getting in touch with your feelings and then going from pain into different levels of love, where ultimately by the end of the method, it takes about 10 minutes, you're experiencing divine love. So
Hmm.
you basically go from feeling pain into divine love. And that divine love is the healing force. You go into a place of harmony, right? So when you're in touch with the spiritual framework of the universe, you're a channel for perfect harmony to flow through you. And it's palpable. You can feel it. Like right now, I can feel it. All I have to do is tune into it. I can experience it. I can feel it. And then when I'm working with other people, they can feel it. Right? If you tune in right now, you can feel this feeling of harmony that I'm nothing but a channel for, because I'm able to get the ego out of the way because I've done the method so much. And I'm able to let this feeling of harmony flow through me. This feeling of harmony brings together what we call the alpha and the omega, which I spoke about in our class last night. Bringing the alpha and omega, the beginning and the end come together in that place of harmony. What is the beginning and the end? So we know in Kabbalah, the spiritual framework of Kabbalah, we have doing this backwards, we have sphere 5, which represents justice. So injustice is an illusion. People say, what do you mean injustice is an illusion? I know someone who went to jail for 35 years who didn't commit the crime. But you got to look at it from the broader perspective. Okay, if you're all identified with one single instance, that's the ego. The soul, the spiritual being, is eternal. It sees the whole big picture. And so if somebody's poor today, they're going to be rich tomorrow. If someone is undergoing some kind of suffering today, they're going to undergo some kind of beautiful pleasure tomorrow. If you're experiencing loss today, you're going to experience gain tomorrow. Everything balances out in the long term. Justice rules the universe in the long term. When you get into a space of inner harmony, you're bringing the beginning and the end together. So let's say you're going through a financial challenge, okay? And you get into a place of harmony. What happens is you're bringing the balancing result into the present moment.
So you're talking about balancing the polarities of the energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Balancing the polarities. That's exactly right. So what happens is when you're living in a state of harmony, where it might have taken you like 10 years to go from poverty to wealth, you're starting to experience perfect financial abundance in the now.
So when we learn to hold that harmony, even that state of harmony, even we're in the middle of an extreme situation, and our ego is identifying that extreme situation as bad, we can neutralize it by creating harmony in that moment, by using the method.
And you use the method if you have to. As you use the method more and more, you can let go of a lot more. A lot of stuff that used to trigger you doesn't trigger you. You can
definitely true for me. Yeah.
Relax, right? True spiritual work is not work. It's about not working. It's about relaxing, completely relaxing into a no pressure state. The most important time to practice these wisdom principles is when you're facing a severe challenge. That's the most important time, because and we're going to get into this in our next episode that we're going to share together. We're talking about spiritual healing. What spiritual living does is it basically heals the situation. So if you're facing a challenge right now and you're starting to panic and feel frustrated and emotional and upset, just do the best you can to relax, to breathe, to let go, to trust peace, not stress. Trust peace, not anxiety. Trust peace, not pressure. Do the best you can to just relax and feel the harmonious energy that happens when Lisa and I are working together. Just feel that harmony coming through you right now. Relax. Everything is going for you. The universe is designed for the fulfillment of your heart's deepest desire. While you're going through the appearance of lack or loss or difficulty, if you just let the whole situation flow, it's going to flow into an upswing. And you're going to see whatever you're concerned about was an illusion, that your life is actually improving in every single level. Whatever it is your truly heart's desire is inevitable and automatic. Inevitable and automatic. Now, you can make it tough on yourself by getting all reactive and frustrated, right? Or you can make it easy on yourself by saying, you know what? Here's how I'm going to relate to my situation. There's no problems outside. There's no situational problem. The only problem is how I'm reacting to it. I'm dealing with it like it's a crisis. I'm in a crisis state. I'm frustrated. I'm panicking. I'm overwhelmed. That's my problem. That's what I got to get out of. I've got to concentrate on my inner state. And when I free myself from my inner state, I will discover that everything is fine and that what I was going through was change. And the law of change from the spiritual framework, the law of change is that everything is always changing for the better.
You're always getting an upgrade.
You're always getting an upgrade.
You have to let go of what you had in order to get the upgrade. And then the personal self doesn't like that. The personal self freaks out. The ego freaks out and sees it as a crisis. But if we learn how to step back and stay in the spirit, in the soul part of the self, then we can trust, have faith that upgrade, that's what we're getting.
That's all you're getting. And it's funny, and it's symbolized, very beautifully and profoundly in the story of Exodus in the Bible, where Moses leads the Jews out and they're getting afraid and they want to go back into slavery, right? They're getting afraid. They're moving to the promised land. You're always moving to the promised land. No matter how dark it looks in the political world, in the government, in the corporation, financially, how much hate crime, whatever's going on in the world today, right? This is the process of an emergence of a better, more beautiful world. That's all that's going on. Corruption is the end of a cycle. Corruption happens during the death of a cycle. You're seeing a tremendous amount of corruption. What is corruption? Selfishness, greed, us against them, hatred, lies, right? That's corruption. That's spiritual corruption. That can't thrive. That is intrinsically self-destructive.
It's like the death throes of a society.
It's the death throes of society, and everybody says, "Well, I want it to go back to the way it was." The way it was produced the way it is. So if you go back to the way it was, you're just going to come back to where you are and wishing you can go back to there, and it just goes back and forth, back and forth. But if you can just trust and let go, and that's what we have to do when we pass away. When the end of our life comes, it's all about just trusting and letting go of who I was and all I was trying to control and familiarity. And I just trust and let go. And I go up to a higher plane of consciousness. I go up to the heavenly planes by letting go. And that's how you bring the kingdom of heaven down into earth. That's the real beauty of a spiritual life. When you're living a spiritual life, you're experiencing prosperity. You're experiencing harmonious relationships. You're experiencing loving intimacy. You're experiencing true career fulfillment. The spiritual life leads you into the kingdom of heaven on earth, but you're not focusing on getting those things. You're only focusing on living in perfect harmony in the present moment and allowing the universe to do what it does, because all the universe is doing is producing beauty and balance and order everywhere, infinitely. The universe creates a garden of paradise. We pave it, but what is the universe doing to the pavement? It's going to destroy it. It's going to crack it. It's going to open up, and there's going to be beauty emerging once again. When you live in perfect harmony, you allow that to come together real fast.
That's a really profound message, and important message for right now, when so many people are feeling overwhelmed by what's happening in the world right now.
But that's not why they're overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed because they have programming. In the first 6 years of life, so what I basically say is every soul comes into the earth plane to get screwed up by their parents. Right? That's the purpose. That's the purpose of our first 6 years is to get all this unconscious, unenlightened programming about the ego, to get us identified with the ego. That's the purpose of coming to this plane. So that you live that, you experience it, it doesn't work, right? Symbolized by taking a bite of the apple and leaving paradise. We go out there, we see, wow, this doesn't work. You know, I've tried worry, I've tried hurry, I've tried depression, I've tried anxiety, I've tried overwhelm, I've tried anger, I've tried fighting. It doesn't get me anywhere. It's like making me feel like I'm in hell. Okay, so now I'm ready to let go. Now I'm ready to try another way. And when you're ready to try another way, a teacher appears, a teaching appears, different things come to you to lead your way back into the promised land, to lead you into the ecstasy of the spiritual life, so that you're in Kabbalah, based on this spiritual framework of the universe, a human being, we have our roots in heaven and our feet on the earth.
And Bob, we're going to talk next time. We're almost out of time, but we're going to talk next time about spiritual healing and give maybe people access to what the method we've been talking about. But in the meantime, how can people reach you if they want to know more about you? I know you have a lot of things about the method on your website, so maybe we can show the website called Love the Method. That's there, lovethemethod.com, and your other website. Here we have. Love the Method, and there's a lot of information about the method on that. We'll be going fully into it, or more fully into it as much as we can. Next time around, we talk about spiritual healing. And people can reach you at that website, right?
You can reach me at that website. Email me. I'd be happy to answer questions. Maybe if I have the time, we can set up a time for a call. I'm happy to talk to you about that, and you'll see guidelines for how to do the method, and a link to one of your sites, Lisa, which has the method in a recorded form.
Yep, we have it recorded on YouTube, and then you also have a book called Lighten Up that people can look at. Find a lot of what you're saying about in your book, Lighten Up. It's available on Amazon, and there it is, right there on Amazon. It's fantastic. This is one that I keep by my bedside and dip into it frequently to help continue to hold that high vibration. So thank you so much for being with us today, Bob. I so appreciate you as always.
Always
And
a pleasure to hang out with you.
yeah, and I look forward to talking to you guys, talking to you next week and continuing the conversation with spiritual healing. And I wanted to say thank you to all of you who are watching and listening. You can find me on my website, lisacampion.com. Come by and visit. I'd love to see you there. So thank you so much for joining us today on The Miracle of Healing, where we are healing the planet one person at a time right here on Empower Radio.